Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahawashi, Bahasham, Rakahak Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahawashi. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who ruled and teach well. And peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Ra'aya with another video, and I'm going to start it off in Daniel chapter 2, verse 36. And this is dealing with the statue of a man made of different metals that King Nebuchadnezzar of the Neo-Babylonian Empire saw in his dream. And the prophet Daniel interpreted that dream. And those different parts and metals of that statue of a man represented the heathen kingdoms that would rule before the kingdom of heaven under the children of Israel, who are known as the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans today. Daniel chapter 2, verse 36, and the header reads, the interpretation, Babylon, the first kingdom. This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. Thou, O king, art a king of kings, for the power of heaven hath given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field, and the fowls of the heaven hath he given into thine hand, and hath made thee ruler over them all. Thou art this head of gold. So, of course, the head of gold is speaking of the Neo-Babylonian Empire under King Nebuchadnezzar. And then each header gives away what each successive part of the statue is. So I'll just give a quick description. Then after that head of gold, you had the arms and the breasts of silver, which was speaking of the Medo-Persian Empire, which took over after the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Then after them, beginning with Alexander the Great, was the thighs and the belly of brass, the Grecian empires under the biblical Edomites, who are known as these so-called white people today. You know, your Americans, British, Europeans, Russians, South Afrikaners, those imposters over in the Holy Land, etc., etc. And then after the Grecian Edomite empires, you get those legs of iron, which is speaking of the ancient pagan Roman Empire, also ruled by the biblical Edomites. Now I'm going to read verse 41. And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, and this is the empire that would rule in the last days that we're currently living in. And it's the reincarnated Roman Empire, the NATO-EU alliance that the U.S. is a part of. And it all began with the Edomites coming back into power in the late 1300s, going into the 1400s, known as the Renaissance period, or the rebirth. And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. And this system that we're living in right now is divided. It's not as unified as the ancient pagan Roman Edomite Empire was. When you look at the EU and NATO countries, you have, of course, the stronger countries such as Britain, France, and Germany. And then you have the weaker nations, economically mainly and militarily as well. And they're usually referred to as the pigs nations: Portugal, Ireland, Italy, Greece, and Spain. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron, the stronger parts, and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And I opened up the video with these verses. mainly 41 to 42, just to show that this kingdom is divided as we speak and will continue to be divided until it completely collapses. This is an article from RT.com titled "Italy Urges EU to Push Back Against US." PM Giorgia Meloni says the bloc must protect key industries as Washington undermines economic competitiveness. Again, this kingdom is divided. And one of the the main culprit that's leading to the heavy divisions of this last leg of the fourth beast, those iron toes mixed with miry clay, is the United States of America, which is a part of that iron and is really the boss of this reincarnated Roman Empire. Whenever the U.S. does anything major out here, you may see some bucking up here or there from her European allies, but what usually happens, they fall in line after the United States of America. Whenever the U.S. has wars abroad, such as the war in Iraq, the Syrian civil war, the Libyan civil war, the war in Afghanistan, you'll have her European allies help her in some form or faction. And when everything's said and done, it's those European allies that always feel the blowback from it. You've got a refugee crisis taking place in Europe due to those wars, among a whole host of other issues. And then when the U.S. comes up with economic policies, as we're about to read in this article, it's always the U.S. that benefits from it the most, and they don't give a second thought to the concerns of their European allies. And again, what this is ultimately going to lead to is the ultimate collapse of this reincarnated Roman Empire, the last leg of the fourth beast in Daniel chapter 2. And America's European allies are going to turn against her at some point during World War III and ally themselves with America's enemies, mainly Russia, China, and altogether they're going to shoot 200 million nuclear missiles onto the United States of America, turning it into the biblical lake of fire from sea to shining sea, and then a desolate, uninhabitable wasteland afterwards. Now let's read in this article about the grievances of some of the parts of clay in those iron toes mixed with miry clay, because again, Italy is one of those weaker nations in this last leg of the fourth beast. Remember the pigs. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has called for the European Union to become more economically independent in the wake of a new U.S. law that puts bloc's manufacturers at a competitive disadvantage, Bloomberg reported on Thursday. Speaking at her year-end press briefing in Rome, Meloni urged the EU to build its own supply chains for key industries in response to the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act, IRA. The kingdom shall be divided. A $360 billion spending bill that President Joe Biden signed into law August, according to the media outlet. The bloc also must revise its rules on state aid to manufacturers and strengthen oversight of supply chains for such industries as computer chips, car makers, and alternative energy, Meloni reportedly said. The U.S. legislation provided for a spending binge on alternative energy infrastructure, including tax breaks for manufacturers in the sector. It weighed subsidies for electric vehicles to domestically produce models and batteries. EU leaders, including French President Emmanuel Macron, a part of that iron, have criticized the law, warning that it may fragment the West. The U.S., as usual, doing whatever it wants without any concern for its allies, thinking that its allies are going to continue to be lapdogs to it, continue to be the U.S.'s bitch. But hey, you can only bully somebody so long before they eventually lash out. But let's read that last statement again. EU leaders, including French President Emmanuel Macron, which France is a nation that has nuclear weapons, have criticized the law, warning that it may fragment the West. And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. Stronger parts like the U.S., a bullying around the weaker parts, further leading to the divisions and the breakup of this system. And also, while Italy doesn't manufacture nuclear weapons of its own, it hosts U.S. military nuclear weapons in its countries. So in a time of war, and when Italy, along with America's other European allies, turn against her, it wouldn't be hard to think that they just completely commandeer those weapons and use them against this whore, the U.S. Maloney has argued that the IRA discriminates against European companies. Italian Economy Minister Giancarlo Giorgetti warned earlier this month that some companies are already considering moving factories to the U.S., which would be a disaster. European Commissioner President Ursula von der Leyen suggested this month that the EU should respond to the IRA by providing funding to companies in need and giving member states more latitude to invest in their own manufacturers. The controversy comes at a time when European economies are already being undermined by energy shortages and other effects of US-led sanctions against Russia over the Ukraine crisis. Hey, another cause of contention between the U.S. and her allies. The U.S., we know, was the one that was heavily pushing for this proxy war against Russia with Ukraine, and what her European allies followed suit and followed in sending weapons to Vladimir Zelensky's government, as well as putting sanctions on Russia, even though these European nations rely heavily on energy exports from Russia. So who's feeling the blowback from these sanctions and other issues being led by the U.S. to go against Russia and Ukraine? Europe. They're on the front lines of American military adventurism abroad, and they're going to be the first casualties feeling the blowback from it. Commenting on the matter earlier in December, Russian President Vladimir Putin said that today the EU's main partner, the U.S., is pursuing policies leading directly to the deindustrialization of Europe, and ultimately leading to policies that's going to completely divide this last leg of the fourth beast in Daniel chapter 2 and cause America's allies to completely turn against her, ally themselves with Russia, and shoot those nuclear missiles onto the United States of America. That's it with this article. And let's get back into these precepts. This is Obadiah, chapter 1. I'm going to start at verse 1. And this whole book is dedicated to the downfall of you Edomites. The header reads, Edom will be humbled. The vision of Obadiah. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh concerning Edom. We have heard a rumor from Yahweh, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen. That ambassador being the men of the Lord, prophets of the Most High, out on the highways and byways preaching this word, as well as putting up video epistles online. And if you're rocking in the spirit, you should be able to clearly see that the Most High is dealing with GMS, or Great Millstone, as well as the brothers that come in the spirit of GMS. Hey, we're being ambassadors of the Most High unto the heathens, telling you what's about to take place through prophecy. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle, and that involves these heathen nations waking up to the fact that you Edomites, especially in the United States of America, are the main problem on the earth, and that you need to be taken out. And also that even amongst the Edomites, hey, there's going to be divisions, and these European Edomites are going to turn against the U.S. and go against her full bore. But now I'm going to jump down to verse 7. All the men of thy confederacy, or your allies, had brought thee even to the border, the men that were at peace with thee, America's European allies, going along with all her dictates, economic policies, political policies, military policies, especially in regards to Ukraine, have deceived thee. Hey, even though you've got a lot of these European nations putting sanctions on Russia and giving lip service in support of Ukraine, behind the scenes, a lot of them still do backdoor deals with Russia to receive energy imports and prevailed against thee. And like I've been saying throughout the video, ultimately, America's allies, especially our European allies, are going to turn against her and ally themselves with Russia. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. These European nations, especially with their NATO apparatuses, get a lot of money, a lot of bread, a lot of sustenance from the United States, for their upkeep. But then that very same money and weaponry and funds they're getting to keep NATO up is going to be from the U.S. is going to be turned against the U.S. to lay that wound under her and destroy her. There is none understanding in him. Now I'm going to close it out in Revelation 17, verse 16. And the 10 horns, and the 10 horns is speaking of the European Union, beginning with the first 10 common markets of the EU, back when it was known as the European Economic Community, and Italy was one of them, which thou sawest upon the beast, NATO. These shall hate the whore that rides upon the beast, Babylon the Great, Mystery Babylon, that virgin daughter of Babylon, that whore, which is the United States of America. And it sits upon the beast with the 10 horns because, again, the U.S. is the puppet master of this current system we're living in, the ringleader, the big bully on the block. These shall hate the whore and shall make her desolate and naked. Hey, they that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire, nuclear fire, from those 200 million nuclear missiles that's going to, again, turn the United States of America into the biblical lake of fire, and then from sea to shining sea, and then a desolate, uninhabitable wasteland afterwards that when everything's said and done is going to stand as an eternal memorial as to what a wicked kingdom looked like, how not to govern the earth, and what the judgment and punishment was for afflicting the apple of the Most High's eye, the children of Israel, who are again known as the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans today. And you've also got the Israelite foreigners right now who look like these heathen nations. But that's it with this video. And with this video, I hope you sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Hey, as we can clearly see, with each passing day, we're getting closer and closer to getting out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites, primarily from the United States of America, before our eternal peace and dominion in the kingdom of heaven. So as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharala, and until next time, Shalom.